Hello and welcome to the Server's Table Podcast, Episode 5. I am your host, Lloyd Edwards, and today we have a special guest, Mr. Barry Smith, a longtime Vipassana meditator. Um, Say hello, Barry. How you doing?
Hello, Brother Lloyd.
That's right, brother Barry. Barry's like a big brother to me in this practice, man. We've been knowing each other for a little while now. He's got a lot of insight into the organization and just the practice in general. Today's episode is brought to you by coffee. Cheers, brother Barry, on some coffee. All
Here's to you.
right, all right. Tell us about yourself a little bit, man. What's up?
Yeah, as far as Vipassana goes, I'm not a master of anything, but I've acquired a particular set of skills, I'm willing to share. I sat my
Nice.
first course in 2000 at North Fork in California, and I've sat 11 10 days, Satipatthana, a 20 and a 30. I've sat and served at about five different centers. I've been on staff at two. I've been a trust member for a year, and I've been serving as on staff for about 4 years, I guess. So I
Okay.
have a fair amount of knowledge about how a center is run and what the experience is like.
Nice. So that's how we met, right? I was serving for 9 months, and we were serving at the same center, and
Right.
that's kind of how we met.
Yeah.
But I think our audience doesn't really have a good sense of what this organization is. Like we talk about it, kind of hint at it. Can you give us a little bit of the history of what this Vipassana mindfulness organization is?
Yeah, it's a fascinating tale. I mean, it's got a great origin story. And you can drill down into it forever, but if you just try to thumbnail it, this organization, what attracted me is it was teaching meditation, but it said it was non-religious, non-sectarian, no dogma. I'm like, yeah. It also
That's Heng chiming in. No, I'm listening. Keep going. That's Heng. Let me send him the link. Let me get Heng in here.
okay.
Yeah, no, go ahead, but continue on. We're
So it
listening.
says it's a non-religion, but there's definitely some gray areas. One is it's teaching a technique that purports to be the one taught by Siddhartha Gautama 2,500 years ago.
Right.
And I'm all down with that. But the Gautama spread the technique. It depends on who you talk to. Could be millions of people. It definitely went into a number of different countries. And then it lost the technique. And people made a religion out of it. Even though the Buddha,
Hmm.
Gautama became the Buddha once he died, and they made a religion out of it. And they did a lot of things that he said not to do. He referred to himself as a meditation teacher, and they turned it into a religion.
Mm.
So, but the technique was passed down in different ways. It's a long, great story, but we need to cut to our particular lineage, which came out of Burma, where the technique was rediscovered, brought down, and it was started being offered to lay people rather than just in a monastery, passed down from monk to monk. Then it's good to go through Ubakin, and then because that was Goenkaji's teacher, and Goenkaji taught his first class in India in 1969.
Okay.
And since that time, it's grown to 170 centers all over the world. And that in itself is just an incredible accomplishment, particularly when you consider that the way this organization has grown, people have sat a course, discovered the benefit from it, and wanted to share it. And then they want to have their own center. And each center has originated organically by students raising the money, finding the land, creating a center by themselves. And each individual center is a standalone center. There is no higher organization. There is no top-down management. It's all run by like a 501 trust, where there's a board of trustees who have to step down once a year, and then they can be reelected. But they have to go through that process of stepping down. And then from there, everything is run by committees. And those committees are run by unanimous consent. So when you look at it on paper, it seems impossible. I sat in on my first trust meeting at 29 Palms in California. And after the meeting, I just sat there and I said, this is the most democratic form of organization I have ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And at that moment, I realized that I had already sat a course and I realized the benefit from it. And I made a decision right there and then that I was going to dedicate my spiritual life. I was going to get rid of all the other things that I've been exploring my entire life and just focus on Vipassana. And I knew that I could support this organization. It's just the cleanest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, you're kind of like the de facto construction guy, right? You're like a lead certified GC and stuff like that, and you kind of did that for the centers, right?
Yeah, I've had a number of careers, but at that point, I was building greenhouses in LA and was doing very well until I wasn't. And Vipassana is one of the things that helped me through that whole process. And one of the cool things, 29 Palms was definitely a turning point for me. And after the trust meeting experience, and then I met some contractors, one in particular who I just thought was the coolest guy in the world. He had a construction company in Santa Monica, and he would make a bunch of money, and then he would travel the world, going to different centers. And he was talking about going to India, Burma, and Thailand, and Vietnam. And I was like, wow, man, I want to do that. He said, okay, this is how you do it. And he ran it down for me. And I said, you have to go online and sign up for courses? He said, no. He said, you just show up. Go to the center manager, tell them you have skills, and they'll say, walk this way. Can you do that? He said, yes, and they put you to work. And so that's what that was my retirement plan. I was reaching that point in my life, and I was done with the world, and I just wanted to focus on meditation. I thought this was a great way to do it. Then I moved to South Carolina, and I found Dhammapatapa in the swamps of Georgia.
Yeah. Hey, what's up, Heng? How you doing?
Is he on?
Yeah. He just...
So just to wrap it up, I met the people here who are amazing people. I think Vipassana people in general are just an amazing group. There's kind of a self-filtering system. And by the time you hit the service table, if you've had the volition or the desire to do something like explore meditation, and you've actually found out how to get on the website, how to sign up for a course, and lucky enough to get into a course, then actually get yourself to a center and sit a 10-day course, which is pretty challenging. And then after that, make the decision to come back and serve. And then you sit down at that service table. It's a pretty amazing experience.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad that you've set this up and that you've stolen my idea to call it the service table. You're welcome.
Hey, great minds think alike, man. I didn't know.
Years. No, it's amazing. I mean, the fact that you, my brother, are doing this is just blows me away.
Right on. So, how you doing this morning, Heng?
Good, brother. Just actually might just join with my camera phone.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool. Yeah, we were just breaking down the centers. We were gonna get into a little bit of background, right? So that's Barry's background. I guess they don't really know. Like I also served for a long time, almost a year, 9 months. That's where we met. Was Dhammapatapa. Heng has also done a lot of service. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Are we getting feedback? I was having trouble hearing you, so I turned up my mic.
Oh, can you mute for a second, Heng? I think you're giving a little bit of a.
Want me to mute?
Oh, it's me. Okay.
Yeah, I'm muting.
All right, there you go. So so you and I met serving. Like we both you definitely like had me running around doing some construction, chopping down trees and stuff with Brother Barry. And yeah, that's how we met, was serving. we both, yeah, and you've always kind of been like one of my favorite people on Dama Land. We, you always kind of were like that, like the practice gives you like a good vibe, a good spirit. Barry was always kind of one of my favorite people there. Um, and yeah, so we were going to talk a little bit about like how these centers run, right? Like the first thing is that they are all volunteer, right? So can you like go into a little bit of like how these things actually work? You said they start organically and stuff like that, but can you break that down a little further?
Yeah, like I said, they're run by a trust.
I trust.
As far
Okay.
as I know, there are stipends given out under certain circumstances, especially for positions that are impossible to fill any other way. Sometimes center managers are supported. To be continuity is huge. When you realize that, like Dhammapadama puts on 18 courses a year, and each one is a standalone experience. Each one is getting new students in, and you don't know exactly who's going to be there until the course starts. And there's an attrition rate. There's usually 1 to sometimes 5 people that will drop out during the course because, again, it's very rigorous. And the screening process, there is a screening process, and it's set up to protect students. The entire organization is designed to teach this technique and create the best possible atmosphere for that to happen. So, and that's a good idea to hold in your mind, because sometimes things don't make sense. But then when you realize that all these rules and regulations that have been set up have that one specific purpose, to teach the technique in the best way possible and to protect students.
So let's talk about the course for a second, right? The courses
Yeah.
they're 10 days, they're 10 days long. They're
Right.
free, right? You don't have to, they don't cost anything to the student.
You will never be asked for money in this organization. It's unbelievable.
Right. So that we don't, the only, we do accept donations, but only if you feel like you've received some benefit from it, right?
Well, no, I mean, well, one thing is they will only take money from old students. You have to, in order to be able to donate to this organization, you have to sit at least one 10-day course.
Right.
They could raise a lot of money out there, and they do not try to raise money at all. No emails, no phone calls. At the end of a course, they give you an opportunity to donate, period.
Okay.
There's a lot of ways to do that. but
Right.
but there is so many things that I've done in the past where you take a course and then you're just on an email list. You're getting phone calls, we need money. And this organization, it takes an awful lot of money to run these places.
Yeah.
And somehow it just comes in by
I think,
volition.
yeah, I think that speaks to the technique itself, right, and the benefit that people receive. But yeah, so like there's housing, right? Because that's primarily what you do, is build a lot of the housing and build a lot of the infrastructure there, right? So it's kind of like people get their
You're
own.
talking about cost? The biggest cost to run a course is food.
It's-
It is by far the largest budget item.
Right. Which is an all
Construction-
vegetarian menu, right? Like, can you talk about the food a little bit? Because that's one of my favorite parts.
Yeah, exactly. I can't complain about the food, man. I have never complained about and it varies from course to course. Sometimes it's brilliant, and I always keep an eye out for like Thai courses or Chinese courses, because the menu does shift a bit, and oftentimes it's like off the charts. We've had some amazing food, especially like Susan. When Susan comes in to cook for Thai courses, it's just incredible.
Yeah, and Suchai. And what's the guy? We had like that one chef that came. It was I think it was during a Thai course. Also, he was like a professional chef or whatever.
Oh, Gavin! Gavin is a 5-star chef. That kid is
Yeah.
he has had an incredible life. I mean, food is his life, and he's done some amazing things. I'm privileged to call him my friend.
Nice. Okay, so cool. So that's what the course is like. The course is you come in on day 1 or day 0, basically. You get set up, you get your room, get a quick bite to eat. Then you start into the practice. They start giving you the instructions on the meditation. Food's covered, 10 days. No cost out of pocket for the besides getting yourself there. And then at the end of the 10 days, what's next? So after that, once you're an old student, you can do what?
Well, you can come back. You can come back onto the property for one thing. I mean, If you're not there to serve or to sit, you're not supposed to be on the property. And occasionally we just get people wandering in. Um, but the volunteer nature, I'd like to talk about that a little bit, especially in the sense that everyone on the trust is a volunteer, and that is a very demanding job. And it's like a corporate job, man. You're on the phone, you're in meetings all the time. You're dealing with the issues that nobody thinks about. You're doing with the insurance and all the permits and everything that it takes to run a huge. Well, we have 22 buildings now, and they all require maintenance, and they all are permitted, and there's pest control and we have a non-kill policy. So all of this has to be, adjudicated at that trust level in a full consensus. I lost the term. I'll get it back. Everybody has to agree, I'll get the term in a second.
Unanimous.
And you have all those people volunteering a lot of time at the top, taking a lot of responsibility, and then you have the teachers themselves. We put 18 courses a year, and the biggest the biggest bottleneck to the growth of the Vipassana centers is teachers. There aren't enough teachers. And a lot of those, if you put teachers on the spectrum, most of them are older. A lot of them are retired. So they're using their retirement time, and they're coming to the centers sometimes at their own expense. They do pay, they do help people pay for their expenses to get to the center, to travel back and forth. There are a lot of teachers who have full-time jobs who are using their vacation time to come and conduct a course. I mean, that's amazing service.
And it's a whole year's vacation too, right? Like 2 weeks. It's a whole year's vacation for one course.
I absolutely know people that are teachers that are using all of their vacation time to serve the center. There's a couple of gentlemen that I've met, they're men, happen to be men, that are center managers and teachers. And they're, who is it, Tom up in Toronto? I mean, like, he's moving snow around for 3 months out of the year, just like serious snow, but he's also teaching and he's also maintaining. He's in his 80s, amazing guy. You meet some really amazing people in this tradition.
Definitely.
What else? So, and then there's long-term service. There's a lot of people that come repeatedly that are serving for months at a time, like yourself. All of that is what keeps this organization going. And in a sense, without each one of those cogs in the wheel, it couldn't happen. I came to a thought years ago that being at a center like this on a day-to-day basis and watching what it takes, everything that has to come together and work perfectly in order for this organization, it's like you feel the power of Dharma rising, let's say. But there are days when you absolutely realize how fragile this is. I mean, I've taken a number of phone calls with us, like, the electricity's out, the water's out, there's a flood. Do we have to shut down the course? And the only time I know of that we have canceled the course is because of COVID, when I got COVID. And they decided to shut the whole thing down. I tested positive the day before a course that I was going to sit. And they had a meeting. There was a big thing. It was like a 3-hour meeting. And ultimately, they decided to shut it down. And as far as I know, that's the only time that Dhammapatapa has closed. And also an interesting fact, I think Dhammapatapa, other than 1 or 2 places in India where once COVID broke, they locked the center down and didn't let anybody leave or come in. But other than that, I think Dhammapatapa is the only center that stayed open throughout COVID because of the nature of the way that the place is structured, that we have these amazing rooms that have cells in the rooms, and we get audio into the room so that anything that's happening in the hall can be heard in the cell, which allowed them to bring people in, send them right to their rooms, and then just keep them there.
Yeah.
Bring lunch.
So just to give our audience a sense of what it is, it's a private room. It's kind of like a hotel style room. You got your private bathroom, you got your private bed, and then in the room there's another smaller room for meditation, the cell, right? So that's what
Yeah, it's 5-star here, and
it is nice. It's a nice center.
when I get these complaints about the fan's too loud or it's too hot or it's too cold, I'm like, take that person and make them sit in a gypsy course somewhere, where there's 8 people in a room using one bathroom and they're in a tent, and then let them come back. I think they have a little more appreciation for what they got here.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
really
it's
is
definitely a nice center. Definitely.
Yeah.
And even like some of the centers in India where like it's not a lot of air conditioning and people are just hot and sweaty and you know, yeah. What do you like about the centers, Heng? Like what is your like because Heng's a long term server or not it's Heng is a habitual server, repeat server, right? Like you
Yeah.
Habitual.
Another cog in the wheel that's mandatory. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the center is great. I've been going to Patapa for a while. There's, in comparison with my first course, it's like you said, Barry, it's night and day because there's no AC. It's just hot. You're sharing bathrooms. You do get your own private room, so that was nice. But it is like my first course was around this time of the year in Cambodia, so it's just swamped out there. So
Yeah. So Heng,
wet, like you feel that heat. So yeah, for sure. Like Dhamma Patapa is great, and yeah, I mean, also it's great to see you, Barry. It's like I haven't seen you in so long, and like I see now you got the beard going, and like this whole
I'm digging the swamp experience.
yeah.
Finally accepted. I'm in a swamp in Georgia. I might as well just let go.
I see it. So yeah, I really have no complaints really. I mean, I do. If anything, I feel like the servers don't get enough the amount of luxury that the students have.
Good point.
that's very
Except for
true.
me.
Except for you, right? So
But they're working on that.
Yeah, but you had to build your own house, Barry. Though that's a little different.
No. I was involved for sure. I made sure I slipped right in there. But but they're definitely aware of trying to enhance the server experience. But the whole system is set up for the students, and everything else is secondary. So I mean, and it becomes so hard to staff one of these centers. I think all centers are realizing they've really got to bump up and improve the server experience. It's a long day. It's challenging. You're up early, and by the time you get to that meeting at the end of the night, it's
Yeah, but I will say as having served long term that to do that comes from a place of like, I mean, 'cause what do they say? One of my favorite sayings: "Selfless service is a selfish act." Right.
Yeah.
So giving up
yeah.
those luxuries and giving up those things helps you to develop as a person and become stronger in so many ways. So I think that it can be rough. It's a long day, but you also take that with you into the world, right? Like
absolutely. And Goenka says that. I mean, serving is I don't know how he puts it, but it's like it's equally as important as time on the cushion.
Right. Definitely.
It's really part of the path, a big part of the path.
Yeah. So Heng, for you, this is like a family thing too, right? Like, yeah, I know your grandma taught me a lot, man. Your grandma taught me a lot, and then like I know like you have a lot of family members who also practice. So how does that? It's like, can you talk about that a little bit? Can you like break that down? Like it's like
yeah, and actually I was mentioning because I feel the same way. With the service, it is a the selfless service and the selfish act. It's to develop ourselves, to develop certain qualities within ourselves, and I think that it's really a fulfilling thing to do when you're serving. And for me, serving, especially with my grandma, like it's great. It's just like wow. It's the first time I ever saw anyone serve with their family member was in North Fork, California, and I saw Pisette and his mom Naeem. They were also Cambodian, so I was like, "Whoa, this is like really hitting my heart." Like, wow, this is just such a beautiful thing, a bonding activity that you can have with your family, where it's super wholesome and you're just like super happy a lot of the times, you know.
Yeah,
I would say all the
a lot of the
time.
time.
Yeah, and it's you really get to bring that, especially with your family, like you get to really bring that home with you into the home. It's like, wow, now you have this experience together. You can like grow on this journey, and it's just your day-to-day experience. Like, you know, when stressful situation, especially if you had to ever be kitchen manager and like your family member is part of the kitchen, is like, okay, what's the best way to talk to them or treat? And then like also it's nice because it's like you have that closeness and they can give you feedback like, hey man, you may be kind of tripping a little bit, or like, okay, like, oh, that was nice, you know, that was cool, keep it up. So yeah.
Yeah, I think you were serving as kitchen manager with your grandmother there, and then I remember we were standing by the stove that's closest to like the where the servers eat, where the servers table is, the servers tables, and we were talking about, I forget what it was, but I think it was like the six uh, Salayatanas or something like that. We were breaking. She was just, your grandma was breaking it down, and you were translating it for me, right? And then we were talking like about like the language. It was just a crazy experience to have like everybody there, and just kind of like learning and getting into the practice. Like, because I don't speak the language at all, and you were like literally like just it was a crazy experience. I'll never forget it. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it was something about Chitta versus Nama,
Oh
and
yes.
Gaia versus Rupa, or something like that.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. Like the different, because there's two different words for mind and two different words for body, and yeah, she was breaking it down, man. She has a very strong.
Yeah.
She should be a teacher at some point if they have a um, uh, yeah. Anyway, they need a Cambodian speaking teacher. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, I mean, I tell her that, she's like, no. So
Yeah.
it's like,
More the reason.
which I'm sure all ATs are like that too.
Shoot, Barry too. I'd be like, Barry, you should try something. He'd be like, same thing. Like, no.
I said, what?
I've said the same thing to Barry, and he said the same thing. Like, no.
I'm just, I'm very fortunate in that in my circle of friends, I have a number of ATs that are my friends and my mentors, some of them, and they help me stay on the path because I have all my life, I've tended to explore the edges, and I do it with my practice. And I feel comfortable in doing that because I always come back to the ATs that I know and let them know what's going on with me. And they get a little concerned, but then they say, okay, they bring me back onto the path. So it gives me a lot of flexibility because another part of this path is that each one of us is exploring it alone. We're exploring the fields of mind and matter by ourselves, in a sense. And another aspect of the way that these centers are set up, you're in a sense, you're asked to pretend that you're here by yourself experiencing it one-on-one with a teacher. You're not supposed to acknowledge any other person other than the teacher. And that sets up a dynamic that you carry throughout the course, and it becomes more and more real to you as you go on. And then Saturday, when you break noble silence, you have that shock absorber, as Goenkaji calls it, and you're able to talk to people. And there's a spectrum. You can put anything on a spectrum. And there are students that don't talk to anybody. They go right back to their room and they stay by themselves, or they don't want to interact. And then other people are out there, and you've got to, you got to tell them, lights out. You got to go back to your bed. You got to go back to your room, because they form these friendships and bonds immediately as soon as they get out of the course, and they start sharing their experiences. And so I guess that's one end of the spectrum where people arrive alone and leave alone, without having made any contacts. And there are other people that make lifelong bonds. They come out of that course and they meet somebody, and boom, they've made a friend for life. So it's a really interesting experience.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
we just met and they're like, yeah,
Yeah, I wouldn't say during the course I wouldn't say you're alone, right? Like I get that, but you are on your own, right? Like I want to make a little distinction there, right? Like
Yeah, okay.
yeah, you're not alone, right? There's support, there's people there, you're surrounded by people, but you are on your own, right? You are responsible for going internal. Like that's why they tell us to kind of stay. I think that's why they tell us to kind of stay, to cultivate a sense of isolation within ourselves, and so we can go inside. But we're not alone per se, but we are on our own in a way.
Well, I mean, this tradition comes out of, the cave tradition, where monks were going into the woods by themselves to practice this technique. And it's kind of like a traditional Buddhist technique. The most extreme of that I've seen are the Tibetan forest
Yeah, Thai
monks.
Yeah,
Thai forest, thank you.
yeah.
That their teachers, they only have one teacher, and that teacher has absolute control over them, and they say, okay, you're ready, I'm going to send you into the forest, I'm going to send you into the section that has the most lions and tigers and bears, so that you can really work on yourself with nothing but an umbrella, a begging bowl, and a robe, and that's really what this place is set up to do, is to kind of simulate that experience. So, and it's deep, I mean, the more you talk to ATs and get the background and stuff, especially those ATs that are deep into the sutras, there are people like myself that are like, I don't know anything about that. And then there's a bunch of people that may not be Buddhists. They don't call themselves Buddhists, but they are well educated in the sutras and the history and the theory of this tradition.
Yeah.
I try to just focus on the technique, and I get stuff by osmosis, by hanging around with people that are studying this at the time. But I personally, I don't have any interest in spending time really learning Pali, studying the sutras. I'm fine on this end of the spectrum, where just watch your breath, become enlightened. Although that's another another topic. I hope you invite me back.
Just to be clear, so there's a couple ways to do this, right? There are a couple paths within this larger path, right? So a couple routes within the path, right? So there's you're talking about the intellectual, the pariyatti, right? The intellectual path, the studying the sutras, there's that saying like one word of dharma is better than a thousand words or something like that of whatever. And then there's the practice, right? What's the word for that, Hang? You know that better. Is it I can never say it. Pati
Pati pati.
and pariyatti. And is there one more that I'm forgetting?
Well, there's pati vedan, but that's like penetrating. That's the penetrating truth.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can you break those down real quick? Like, because I know you kind of have a little bit of better understanding of that, like the pariyatti, the pati, and the
Well, this is when we get into the Satipatthana course. So this is a more in-depth course, but it's basically based on what this technique is about. Ooh, I feel like.
Well, no, you don't have to go into it, but just the difference between just the difference. Yeah, that's a little deep. No, just the difference between pariyatti and pati, and like how those two things are different paths. Like, can you break that down a little bit?
The pariyatti, that's the intellectual aspect. It's kind of like the map for the pathway that we're going to, and pati, it's the actual practice, the actuality of the map. So you're going to wherever you're trying to go on this map, which is for us, it's what we're trying to do, be enlightened, like Barry said.
Well,
or
we
be
define a
liberated.
goal. We all have to define that goal, right?
Right. So yeah, it's that, and pati vedan, it's once the path is actualized, it's continuous. You're always, even, well, I don't know. if this is true after you reach the final goal, but I'm sure there's like once you reach the goal, it's like the practice is supposed to continuously happen to you or penetrate within you. So the pativedana is the penetration. It's actually, I don't know too much. Maybe I'm not a good person to explain.
I'd like to talk about that point, because my understanding is the technique, all of this that we're learning, can't define what enlightenment is, what nibbana is. So it's always just pointing towards something that you have to discover for yourself and define. And then the technique goes away. Once you're there, you have no use for the technique. So I haven't heard what you just said defined before, because I've always thought that, you reach nibbana and then boom, it's like, I've taken a dip into samadhi, and there's nothing else. Everything goes away.
Yeah, so just to clarify for our audience, samadhi is like a deep level of concentration, and nibbana is kind of like like an undifferentiated state, right? Like no, like it's like almost like a pureness, pure balance, or I can't even define it because I haven't experienced it either, but it's kind of like nirvana, it's a rock and roll group from the '90s, right? So
yeah, nirvana. Well, yeah, nirvana is described as having no. I mean, based on the way it's been described, it's like you have no more sensation. So you lose all the mind and the body, all four parts of the mind and the body. It's like you don't experience that anymore. But in nirvana, there's still, 4 stages of nirvana. So you can reach nirvana, but you still haven't relinquished all of your impurities that you've held on to. So, you might have to be there longer to experience the truth. So it's just, you just have to keep practicing until you are the practice.
Right.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Barry. You were saying you've reached different levels of samadhi, and that brought about I interrupted you.
No. I mean, I had one experience in particular. It was on the 5th day of my 10th course. I went in for the 2:30 sit, and I sat for 4 hours straight with no awareness that I was doing that. And when people came into the hall, and I was like, oh, is it? I thought it was a break. I thought it was the 1 hour break. And then I got up and I realized that we were about to go into discourse. And the kid came up to me and said, man, you're my hero. Later, he said, you sat for 4 hours and you didn't move. And so it was an amazing experience for me. And I remember a lot of it. It was just like, to be quite honest, it was like doing Toad, but I don't know, make that comparison. But it's just it's like a field of, there was a color to it. It was like golden, right? And I had a sense that a thought was arising, and before that thought, even before that energy, it was like a little flick of energy. I recognized it as an emerging thought. And because so much of my practice had been, when thoughts arise, I'm not interested, I'm not interested, I'm not interested, I'm not interested, I'm not interested. And that got me to a place where I kind of feel a thought coming on, and it will dissolve before, it's like I don't put my awareness on it. So it goes away. It's like a sankhara. If you can observe it, if you don't react to it, it rises and passes away. To me, that's basically the same concept. But it got so finely tuned in that moment that it was just a field of energy, and it seemed to be in the left part of my field, and everything else was just kind of this golden pixelated vibration, and it would and I just stayed in that state, totally unaware of anything that was happening other than that in my mind and body. And of course, I started talking to Dick and Bruce about it, and they said, well, it sounds like you had your first dip in samadhi and probably the 5th jhana. I'm like, well, okay. But as I walked out of the hall, I was like, that was amazing. It may never in that moment, I had to say, it may never happen again, but at least it happened once. And I really haven't gotten back into that state. I've played around with it, but I haven't duplicated that experience. And that's another thing that they say, that you can probably go in and out of that state 1,000 times before you learn how to stay there.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I think it's important for people to understand that like these things happen, but like not being attached to them, right? Like as much as, because I've had some really deep experiences that I haven't been able to repeat either, or that like you get glimpses of them. They're not the same. They're not as strong. They're not as whatever. But they, but it's so the practice is always evolving, right? Like the understanding is always evolving. The things that you experience are always evolving. So I don't want people to get that sense that I have to get back there or I have
It's
to
just
have,
another job,
yeah,
right? It's another craving.
right.
I'm grateful that I was at a state, like I said, when I walked out, I had no desire to try and recreate that. If it happened organically, you just have to leave yourself open to it.
Mm. Yeah.
And I'm grateful I had gotten to that point where I knew enough to realize that.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's a beautiful thing, man. I know, like in this practice too, just going back a little bit to like how these centers, because these are places where a safe space, right, for people to have these deep, deep introspections, to call it, for lack of a better term, right? Well, actually, that's probably the best term. Like you're going inside of oneself, and you're just looking at yourself, right? So we don't actually go out preaching, right? We don't, no proselytizing, not a religion. Like I want to talk about that a little bit more. Like how is it that we're able to do these things without, standing in the street waving signs and stuff?
I refer to it as magic, and I've just accepted that term. I mean, what else can you call it? As I walk around here every day and see how I use the term Dhamma rising. I mean, that it's like a Pali term, but it means something to me now when I watch the energy grow and create this very complex, very specific atmosphere and condition. And just that, the protecting students. I mean, the whole thing is set up to protect students and provide an environment. And it starts when you sign up when you sign up for a course. They're screening people, and that's a very complex thing. It's simple in a way. I mean, they just scan and they look for, are you doing drugs? Well, we want to talk to you. Have you just come out of a mental institution? Let's talk about that, okay, before you come into the course. And it's not because they're trying to exclude people. It is absolutely the most inclusive and diverse organization I've ever seen. But when you're in the hall, it's exceptionally, and people who think that they're in great shape can totally freak out in a course. And it happens. It doesn't happen every course, but occasionally it will happen. And people have to be taken out and they have to deal with that. So, and the only problem is that, we're not set up for that. We're not set up as a therapy organization. It's just set up to teach you, but it's a very intense process. And it can bring up all kinds of things. And if you're not emotionally stable, you can get agitated. And the problem with that is it disturbs other students, and they go through great lengths to put you in this little bubble so that you're not distracted by anything. That's the whole point of pretending that you're alone. You don't want to be distracted. That's why there's a dress code. You don't want to be distracted. That's why there's a separation of the genders. You don't want to be distracted. They're trying to eliminate as many distractions as possible so that you can just focus on the technique.
Yeah, and we do have like non-binary courses and things like that aren't as strict.
That was an amazing course. We
Was
just
it?
had one, and I learned a lot. It went to such length. They changed all the signs.
Yeah, I
made them
remember.
gender neutral. That was huge. We have so many signs on this property. Then we took them down. So I have this big pile of signs in the shed. Great deal of effort went into producing that course. And, one of the things about the service table is that it's gender specific. We have women in one room and men eating in another room. And there are pros and cons to that. I mean, there are benefits to it for sure, because you're much more open, I think. You got a group of men um, you're operating under the principles of noble speech, so it's already qualified. But
Mhm.
then, you know, you got men talking to men, and you got women talking to women. It's a different experience. But during the binary course, there were women in that table. You know, all of a sudden they were like, "Rules are gone." Some women in particular, like, "I'm eating with the men," and it was great. It was really good, but it was a different experience.
Right, right. No, that's great. Yeah, sorry, I missed that one. I helped plan that one a little bit. I remember that sign conversation in the committee meeting. Um, but yeah, those courses, or just generally speaking, all the like you said, they're set up to protect people, and that is a very powerful thing. And we're not, and I think it's just really so that they get the technique right. It's like, you know, that's the main goal, right? The whole organization, from my understanding, is set up to keep this technique in the form that was passed down from antiquity, from Gautama, right?
That's one of it. Yeah. I mean, the first thing I think is to teach it, and then to teach it in its purest form as laid out by Goenkaji. And that's another topic. You know, Ubakin had other teachers, and they didn't teach exactly the way that Goenkaji teaches. So there's a little controversy, you know, that I hear about it. And I think it's interesting, but I don't really want to, I don't care about it. I'm just focused on the technique,
Right.
but it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, well, the technique itself is still, even though it's taught worded slightly differently, the in and of itself, the actual just focus on the breath, like that doesn't change, right? That's like very important.
Anapana is pretty universal.
Yeah.
It's really the Vipassana part of it that's different.
Okay. Okay. The mindfulness. So okay, so let's talk about like the no proselytizing. Like we are not, like we don't go out and we don't preach, right? So
Yeah.
what is proselytizing? Like how does that differ from other practices, right? Like we're not out there, and we have
I
and
think
we use
the
a lot of
main,
jargon too that we're talking in this conversation. We've used a lot of jargon, but it's not necessarily like a rite or ritual. It's just ways of defining certain elements of the technique. I want to give our audience a sense of like how this isn't like, our Catholic school, the Catholic school upbringing, or the hangs, whatever my Christian background, or it's not exactly the same. There are overlapping universal elements in any practice, but it's not that. I want to kind of emphasize that. And can you guys, both of you guys, can you talk about that? Like, how is that different from how is this organization different from those religions that have rites, rituals, dogmas, and people out there preaching?
right, go on.
I was gonna say you. Um, oh well, I don't have too many experience with other religions or anything like that. I grew up kind of Buddhist, but of course there were traditions and dogmas for sure. Because a lot of the teachings get misconstrued, or over time it transfer from one place to another. The tradition follow. It's like, ooh, let's add a little bit of Cambodian tradition to this, Buddhist practice, and so it's and even the word Buddhist, like, and Goenka would say this, and you can find it, or I guess wouldn't be able to find the word Buddhist or Buddhism in the sutta. You would find words like Dhammiko or Dhammika, which is followers of the Dhamma, or the one who is practicing the Dhamma, which is very non-sectarian. It's really for anyone.
Yeah.
It's there's no real tradition. I guess the tradition is the actual practice, or the thing, like the stories that the Buddha shared. They're all to inspire us to continue the practice. So anything we hear, it's strictly for that purpose. It's not to convert us to believe that, oh, this is, like someone's here to save you, or or anything like that. It's just for you to practice and for you to grow. He's the teacher. Here's the teaching. Are you being taught? Are you experiencing what you need to experience to get what you need to get out of this practice? And that's really it. There's no trying to convert you. And if anything that you don't believe or feel like you have issues or doubts about, it's like, yeah, keep having doubts about it. You know, there's no objections to that. There's no like, hey, you have to believe that this is the way. But it is there for you to, hey, give it a fair trial, practice it, see it for yourself. Are you going to gain benefit? And most likely you will. Because unless you aren't practicing properly, which a lot of people are not practicing properly, myself included, for a very long time. And that is something that I know that we're also trying to limit, because, you know, we don't get the support that we get sometimes after a course. Like, you know, like Barry said, it's like sometimes you meet people after a course, but then there's also those people who after their first course never really talk to anyone. And so they may be getting a very deep experience, like, you know, the fifth jhana or something like that. And they're like, oh, this is, they made it, or they feel like, okay, now let me try to replicate this experience. Which then is like, okay, you're not focusing on the reality as it is, which is the whole path. So
As it is.
Yes, as it is. Not as we'd like it to be.
No, I think I like what you were saying there about doing that exploring, because it is like investigation, right? There's no, it's not a blind faith. You need to investigate this phenomena for yourself. I like that. I like what you were saying there. That's very true. Yeah. What do you think,
The other
Barry?
thing,
Yeah.
the other thing you touched on was Goenka really stresses that it's universal thought, universal practice, universal truth. You know, it's not people saying that I have the truth. It's like I had 10 years of Catholic schooling, and when I was through with that, I was an angry atheist. That's what the Catholic Church gave to me. So I had a lot of resistance to any kind of religion. I looked at all of them pretty rarely, and I studied them. I went back and studied world religions. You know, George Smith's world religions, started with that. And one thing that became evident after a while is that they all have some primary truths, universal truths, that, and it's brotherly love. Basically, it's treat your neighbor as yourself. You know, it's that basic concept that I think any religion needs as one of their primary tenets in order to keep going, because you have to have that kernel of truth for people to buy all the other stuff.
Mm. Yeah. Well said. Well
But
said.
I really appreciated that he was stressing universal truths, and there's no dogma, no rituals, that type of thing.
Yeah. So we use this term Dhamma a lot, right? So is Dhamma? I mean, it has so many translations. Phenomena, like Dhamma is kind of universal truth, right? Like,
Well, what's the definition of it? It's nature, it's truth. I mean, it has multiple definitions, right? But I think one is nature, one is the truth.
I think it's one of the main origin is something that contains, the containment.
right.
So there was a lot of meaning, because the containment is usually the containment. It's like you want to keep the good stuff in. So sometimes people will say, oh, Dhamma is the good stuff. So it's the containment of the true, or the goodness of the nature, and anything else that's not within this containment is not good. But yeah, there's a lot of there's a lot of meanings for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
then
let's.
also the containment of the mind as well. Yeah.
Okay. So okay, container, right? So we're talking like a jar or something, right? And then now we're kind of getting into the origin of the word, right? So it comes from this, because I've heard that before, but I'd never really couldn't fully grasp it, to be honest. It was a little like outside of my because like the way we normally use it is natural phenomenon, or like, the like these truths, like universal truth is a way that I feel like we use it a lot as well. Like, the sun will rise because that's its dhamma, or things like that is kind of how it gets used from time, right? So from time to time. So how does that relate to it being a container? Like, how is that? How does it go from being a container to being natural law, or like universal law, or like, yeah.
Ye- Yeah, I mean, as it like the definition, I wouldn't say it changes over time, but it evolved over time. So there's the as I said, it's the containment of whatever's in the mind, and sooner or later it just diverts into nature somehow, or what is the goodness, and then there was a few different. I'm not sure which way it went to first, but it's kind of like some words like pagoda. Pagoda wasn't actually. It's actually a Portuguese uh,
Really?
interpretation of the word. Yeah,
Really? I didn't know that.
yeah, because the Portuguese, when they went to Sri Lanka, they didn't know how to pronounce. I forgot what the actual word is, Shwagoda or something like, because it's the shwag, you know, shwag, yeah, something like that.
Like in the 17th century or something?
Somewhere around there. So it's kind of the same way. It's like people, words, they evolve, they change. Even like how Hindi evolved from Sanskrit and Pali and
Yeah.
many languages. It's kind of the same way, similar way. Yeah.
See, I think of it as energy, especially in this tradition. I mean, uh, the Buddha, being the first quantum physicist, as he's often called,
The
just
supreme scientist.
he claimed that he was enlightened, and he was enlightened for a specific reason, because he experienced the world as it is, and then he just defined the world as it is the way he saw it, and it was wavelets, wavelets, wavelets. It was copulus, infinitely small particles, and that they are energy and particles. I mean, he defined that pretty clearly 2,500 years ago, and which excited me. That's another thing that drew me to this tradition, because I'm a fan of quantum physics, and I continue to this day um, to think about this practice in those terms. And I also think about sankaras and releasing sankaras.
What's a sankara?
You're going to define a sankara?
No, what I'm asking you, what is a sankara? Jargon. We're using jargon. What's a sankara?
We can spend a while on that. But let me just say, I think of sankaras as neural networks in the brain. When they're talking about releasing sankaras, I'm at the point where I can feel different parts of my brain, and those neural networks. And so the deep-rooted sankaras, the ones in granite, that's your your subconsciousness. That's your primal brain. And it's like this area back here. And there are times when I'm in that range and it just lights up. I can feel energy going over there, as opposed to stuff that happens in the neural, in the front of your brain. And so that's what keeps me, that's one of the things that keeps me interested in this tradition. I mean, I love it. And I'll go back, to Bruce and Dick and say, okay, this is what I'm working on. I'm like, okay, yeah, well, I get it. I can see it. Well, if it keeps you interested in your tradition, that's okay. But, they're on another path. But that's okay. We all have to do it in our own way.
Nice. So the Dhamma for you is energy, right? And vibration. Yeah,
Everything is energy.
Go ahead.
If I could, I mean, like when I was in that samadhi state, it was all energy. And I believe that it was broken down, the entire universe in those moments were broken down to just two things: awareness and energy and motion. And according to quantum physics, it's all energy. Everything is energy. And the only thing that's separate from that is awareness. And according to quantum physics, when you're aware of something, it changes the nature of it. It affects it. I mean,
The observer changes the property of the
one of the
observer.
things I love about this technique, it really brings you right to the core of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we have the two truths, right? The absolute, the apparent truth, and the ultimate truth, basically, which is um, um, the apparent truth is that this wall is solid, right? But the absolute truth is that it's smaller particles and that it's wavelets, like you said. That's a
Very
principle too. Yeah, which is very quantum in nature. It's one of my favorite parts of the practice as well, for sure. It's the quantum investigation of it. So to you guys, Dhamma is a quantum understanding, right? A physics kind of understanding. That's like that's where we're going.
I mean, early on, he said, we're here to explore the fields of mind and matter. And my mind went right to quantum fields. You know, I'm like, yeah, baby, let's go.
Nice, nice.
Yeah, I think it's just for me, it's just an experience, and in accordance with the practice, something that just really helped me is as it is, but also that it is changing.
Yeah.
So I kind of like mesh those two together to kind of remind myself, like, as it is changing all the time. So every experience, it's always new to me, which keeps me fresh, keeps me okay. This is still, it's still new. It's still new to me because this moment hasn't happened yet, and now I'm experiencing it.
Give me
Before,
chills.
what's that?
Said you're giving me chills. I was with you, babe. I've never heard that put that way. That I really like that.
Yeah.
As it is and it is changing. That's yeah.
Yeah. No, the way you just described, I'm gonna go back and look at this later.
Yeah, it's something I kind of just, and this was the first time I went to Dhammamanda, and I was at that center for about a month when I had that, or maybe it was a month and a half or 2 months when I had that thought, like, oh, it is. I have to experience the reality as it is, but I also have to remember that it's changing because that's the core practice. And I talked to the ATs and also read the book, The Meditator's Hand Guide, with Bill Crecilius. Yeah, he says like that's the most important thing with this practice is understanding that it's changing, and that you are not able to control this change. It's just going to keep changing, and you just have to experience it. And that's what I've been focused on. And beforehand, something that kept me fresh is this mind is always giving me some type of entertainment. Like I don't need to watch any TV, and this mind is already giving me like so many dramas and plot lines. I'm like, oh man, what do I need TV for? So, but yeah, that's what's been keeping me in the practice. So it's great.
Beautiful thought.
Yeah, that's another. You know, it's great when you get another perspective of it. You get to see that because that's the way I think of it. I think of awareness and energy in motion, which is the change. You know, It's just those two aspects of it. But the way you put it, man, that really hit home for me.
Yeah, that's why we have this servers table, man, where we can sit around and discuss.
This is what happens every day at lunch.
That's it, man.
You get up and you're leaving. You're cutting the. You know, it's 11:45 and you got to move. So you're in mid sentence and it's like but hold that thought. We'll talk about it tomorrow.
Right on. That's so true. It's so true. But yeah, man, I want to thank our audience for tuning in today, man. Another episode of the Servers Table with Barry and Heng. Yeah, man. You guys got any parting words for our listeners? Anything you want to like kind of sum up or let them know before we take off here?
I want to thank you, Lloyd, for organizing and like structuring this. This is great because now we have opportunities to share our stories, and also I think one of the most important thing is, and Barry, you said like this process was a lone process, but one of the most important things that was said, this was a story by the Buddha, and I'm sure you both heard this story, maybe I can share it with the audience, is one of Buddha's secretary, Ananda, went out for alms one day and just meeting all the people who are on the path on this journey to enlightenment. And he's like, wow, having conversation with them, it's like, wow, this path, having these admirable friends with us, it's really half of the path. We're halfway there, just having these friends. And Buddha was like, no, don't say that. Having admirable friends is the whole path. So
I've
great.
been looking for that quote. I really love it, and I've heard it several times, but I don't know where it is. Do you know where you can find that story?
I will try to find it for you.
Okay, I'd appreciate that, because, yeah, I've referred to it a couple of times and I don't really know where it comes from.
I think Goenka says it in one of the side discourses if you go on the app. Yeah, I'll look for it too. I'll see if I can find it.
Yeah, that'd be great. I just like to say that I think this is really important, as I've been involved in meetings with ATs and other management people who are looking for ways to support old students, because the entire organization is set up for people to come, sit a 10-day course, and then go, and then that's it. There is there's nothing set up for support of old students. And the community is trying to address that, but Goenka set this thing up, and it's a machine, man. It just cranks out people learning the technique. But after that, you're on your own. So I think this is really valuable, and I'd like to support it in any way that I can.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for coming on the show today, Barry. I mean, the fact that you've been around the organization for as long as you have, and that you can kind of like help people to understand what it is and what it's about. We've had a couple of these episodes. Heng's been on a couple, and we kind of always touch on things, but having you come in and clarify things has been really helpful for sure, for sure. And Heng, as always, brother. Okay.
I've been continually amazed at the table with the level of information that people have. I mean, some people have sat a number of courses. They have no idea how the organization is run. They just come, they sit, and they leave. And they don't know, and have never served. There's a lot of people who've sat a lot of courses and never served. They have no idea what goes on behind that kitchen door. Right. It's a whole nother world.
Yes, indeed. The service table.
Yeah.
All right. So for everybody out there, you can go ahead and check us out. We're going to have some links in the description. Feel free to support. Feel free to just like and subscribe, all that good stuff. This is Lloyd checking out, and that's go ahead, guys.
Heng.
Saying
Great to see both of you again. Great to see
Good.
you.
Likewise.
Yeah, definitely. You guys got to come back for sure, Barry. You got to come back.
For sure.
Pencil me in.
All right, guys. Thanks again, and y'all have a good one. This has been another episode of the Service Table. Be happy.
Be happy. Be happy. Be happy.
All right, stop streaming. You don't have to click out.
That's what I did last time too.
Yeah. Hold on, let me text him back.
Oh, that was dope. That was super dope. It's good to get another perspective, I feel like, especially because he wasn't part of the beginning process,
right?
And of like trying to like there was like this episode in How I Met Your Mother. I don't know if you ever seen the show, but this guy, he's like a teacher, architect professor, and he's trying to like bring up stories of like, okay, how can I teach this class or whatever. He's like talking to the bar, and then he goes to the wrong class on his first day, Econ 305. So he's teaching the wrong class, and then he's late to his class. The real professor comes in. He's late to his class. He has to run across campus.
One second, Heng. Barry, jump back on the video, man. We're still on here. We're just chatting. I just stopped the streaming and stuff. Yeah. Okay. All right. Same code, same link in your email. Yeah, go ahead, Heng. I'm listening to you. So he goes to Econ 305.
Yeah, he goes to.
This is amazing.
Yeah, and basically he I was just telling Lloyd that